Okay, that's now you're all day, and it's supposed to start any minute again. By so it is. Um, so I want to take a look at lesson number 356. Remember, we're still operating with the contemplation of what am I, and as we open our mind and we realize the miraculous nature of our being, right? Now, let me see if I can do this the right way and say it. Okay. At some point in time, when you have had an experience of who you are in reality, and yet you recognize being here has a purpose for you and a function to fulfill. Okay. What you begin to recognize that everything is miraculous. Like the miracle that you are, in a sense, in the ability, the miracle that you are, is beyond the form and space and time whatsoever. And when you start to be in touch with that, even within space and time, you get to understand the miraculous nature of the mind and heart that you are as being part of the eternal and infinite love of God as Christ. You begin to, you understand, in a sense, how, I don't know how to say this, the power that you are requires, it's why we use the term miracle, and it's why there's principles of miracles. If you utilize your mind and follow the principles of miracles, what you'll begin to witness to is and are miracles. Okay? The miracle is already in play all the time, but it is the following of the principles and the allowance for them to be true that gets you to the point where your own vision and, how do I say this? There's two things I need to bring in. Okay, there's two things Jesus says. One is the idea, Jesus teaches, everything keeps gentle pace with your awakening. Okay? Okay, your body keeps gentle pace with your awakening. Okay? But your awakening is based on the recognition of the miraculous nature of your mind that's not really in space and time, and yet has taken on space and time as conditions of limitation. Because for a second we forgot who we are. And in the utilization of the limitations as a way of helping us recognize the power of the infinite being that we are, you begin to see why we use the term miracle. Because the egoic mind cannot understand it at all, because the egoic mind is the idea of separation, wherein which everything is discrete. And there really is no communication, no points of touching, which is most helpful to me when I began to understand the nature of communication as actually being part of the experience of communication is part of your heart being able to feel. But when it's hardened by pain and guilt, you can't feel the communication that's already there, so you can't allow the rejuvenation to take place. But the communication is something that we feel. We may not have words for it, and the feelings may, in a sense, how do I say this, all somehow still are recognizable to us. Okay? It's like we recognize the communication in where it, and the true communication in how we feel, Because when we feel communication, as opposed to feeling separation, the feeling of communication is expansive and freeing of the conditions of limitation that are imposed upon us by identifying with the idea of separation. The miraculous nature of the action in our mind in space and time is beyond any human evaluation or ability to judge and make sense of. In fact, that's part of the reason why in the Course, Jesus says, before he could, and the notes, we're calling them something else. We're not calling them unabridged because the unabridged term doesn't apply any longer after we've reformatted all the notes. It's more of an intimate diary, an intimate dialogue between Helen and Jesus. Okay. I forgot what I was talking about. I was just... Okay. What I'm saying is there's a miraculous action that takes place within what occurs in space and time. Okay? And when we feel the communication, and what Jesus says actually is healing takes place to the degree to which we are able to lose our attachment and identification with the body. And if we can do it for a single instant, the totality of the light of reality gets in, and that's what heals. Okay? That's what this lesson 356 is about. That's the miraculous action that I'm talking about. Okay? Sickness is but another name for sin. Healing is but another name for God. The miracle is thus a call to him. Now, what I want to say, there's a couple things I want to say about this. Okay. Sickness is another name for sin. Remember, the ego, the body's mind, strives, survives on definition, separation, delineations, and attempts to solve the problem by controlling the issue and keeping it in the realm of where it can make distinctions. Okay? So when we hear, okay, because remember we said early on, we're image makers. And we're freeing ourselves by the recognition that we're image makers from the control those images previously had on how we lived, because we gave those images a reality based on the reality that we think the world of space and time is, because we're image makers. That's how we do it. We're projecting. Okay, there's a whole nother talk that could be about situations being composed of the thoughts of many. But sickness is another name for sin. The ego mind, your mind, when you do this lesson, is going to try to tell you, based on the nature of your own relationship with your body and the loved ones around you, it's going to define sickness for you. It's going to make sickness into a specific, okay? Is but another name for sin, okay? It's going to make sin into a specific, okay? When it tells you healing is but another name for God, it's going to specify everything so that you could think you could utilize the specifics to understand this lesson and accomplish healing by freeing yourself from sin, by calling on the conceptualized nature and image of God that you have put out in your mind, seeking an answer that you can still control and understand. And what I'm trying to say is this: don't define what sickness is. When an ego goes and attempts to offer you an image of what sickness is, okay? And when the ego goes and attempts to tell you specifically what sin is, you're going to go about, if you believe the ego, attempting to rectify and understand this lesson in the term of the specifics the ego has given to you, rather than the generalization and the freedom from specifics that Jesus is offering you as a way of freeing yourself from the definitions that you've utilized, which is what has imposed sickness and kept sin as the cause of guilt in your mind. Healing is but another name for God. Okay? We're freeing our mind from everything we thought it was. When we think God, the ego wants to make something specific that it can understand within the realm of the world of limitation, that it convinces you is unlimited because you think there's space and time that goes on infinitely and forever, and you got a lot of room in there to work things out and figure out the problems and the answers. None of that is true. None of that is going on. That's what the ego fosters as what the illusion is, to keep you in the specificity of its limitation and thinking that it's got an answer that can't be seen or experienced without freeing yourself from the attachment that you have to those limitations in form associations that you choose and associate in your mind with guilt. Okay, so people say, oh, sickness is, oh, I have cancer. Let me figure out what sin I've committed. Although, if you have cancer, cancer can be healed by freeing you from the karma of what you think is causing it. But the ego, it operates under the dictates of seek and do not find. So you can't find it that way. If you would never be sick by choice if you knew that you were making the choice. You would never commit the sin that was going to give you cancer if you were in a condition of awareness at the moment when it occurred. That's dumb. And you're not dumb, nor is your ego dumb. So it's hiding everything from you. The only way that you could understand and heal is undo, is but another name for God. Healing is an action of mind. God is not something specific outside of you that you need to prostrate yourself to in order to get rid of cancer. God in your mind has taken you on a very specific image, function, and abilities. And that's what you have to free yourself from. Sickness has taken on very specific and definite, well written out and discussed forms in just about every field of human endeavor possible. And sin is the same way. None of those are what they are. Those are definitions designed by the ego to keep you entrenched in the idea that you can control it if you can name it, because that was the initial function that occurred in separation. Adam named the animals. There was no need to name anything because it was a constant participation in the totality of the communication of love with the infinite capacity to express love eternally without the necessity for specificity and the need for differentiation in thinking that has to happen between things rather than within, as the totality of the extension of the activity of what it is. Okay? If the miracle, this is the miracle principles. The ego defines, this is the way you're asked to understand. How do you know what the ego does? The ego defines, the miracle undoes definitions. If you could undo your definition of sickness and sin and ask for healing in the name of God, you could free yourself for enough time for the light and love to enter in to rejuvenate you and begin to enliven you with the flow of eternal life, which heals the human condition in every regard. And it also demonstrates your willingness to give up the authority problem that you maintain by thinking you know who you are without appealing to who you created you for the answer. Father, you promised you would never fail to answer any call your son might make to you. It doesn't matter where he is. Of course it doesn't matter where he is, where he's making the call from, because if he needs to make the call, wherever he is can't possibly be a real place. So what matter? You're making a call for help. What difference does it make where you're calling from? Help? Why? What seems to be his problem, nor what he believes he has become. Right, because the miracle restores you to sanity as to the degree that you will allow yourself to. There's a miracle that has already restored you to the totality of sanity. Totes. Totes. Totes is like the contemporary slang for total. Yo, that's totes. You have already been, there has already been a miracle that has reestablished you in totes. And the way we learn of that miracle is not by attempting to go faster and ahead. It's by resting for a second in the certainty of the occurrence of it without the necessity for any egoic proof, and the allowance for the Spirit of God, which is one, to envelop you in its goodness and wholeness, so that the life, the eternal life that is in your soul, has room in your own mind thinking to rise up and show you where you always have been and never left. Okay? Miracle reflects your love. It's a reflection because it's working still in space and time where we need the corrective procedure. Remember, at some point in time, even the miracle as a technology is no longer required for your own atonement because you've recognized, understood the miracle, seen the working of it, and now it's no longer miraculous in that sense. It's your natural state because you've aligned and converged with who you are in reality, and you're living to the integrity of that by following God's will in all your things, in all your doings. Yet, even if you fall away for a second, when it catches back up to you because you restore yourself to sanity, you're right back where you've always been. That's the nature of this thing. Nobody could ever explain. But when you undergo the experience, you know it with certainty. And you laugh at everything that's going on around you in a certain way, because no matter what anybody couches it off as, or no matter how specific anybody attempts to make it, the freedom comes in the non-necessity for the specificity, because you know of your own wholeness and perfection in reality, and that doesn't require any difference because there's no moving parts. It's one. And yet you still remain who you are. God, our creator, remains who we are, and there's no competition within the oneness because there's no specificity of egoic thinking to come up with names for things that don't exist to convince us we aren't who we are. He is your son, and you will answer him. The miracle will reflect you, and thus it answers him. Your name replaces every thought of sin, and who is sinless cannot suffer pain. Okay, do you get this? This is another way of saying you can't serve two masters. Do you get it? You're either in sickness, suffering, and pain, or you're in communication in the recognition of your own wholeness. The two worlds don't meet. So choose you must. And since you must get the result of your mind, the choices must represent opposite conditions. The opposite of a limited condition that contains opposite is the totality of condition within which there's no opposites and to which there's no opposition. that's hard for the human mind to conceptualize because it's the release from conception. Everything eventually, if all there is God creating, then everything that you could possibly call on would be God creating, because you're not separate from it. You are God creating, and God is creating you. So the idea of separation being the only problem is answered at any single call, has been, and there's a miracle that has already allowed you to recognize who you are, return home to your own wholeness and perfection, and it's playing out in time, not based on time, but based on your willingness to no longer settle for the specificity of the ego and give yourself these momentary breaks where no definition is necessary, where sickness makes no sense, because sin doesn't exist. And all the images together fly out the window and you undo the world from everything you thought it was. Now you're healed. That's what salvation is. Salvation is the recognition that I did this to myself. And because I did it to myself, I could not only not do it any longer, I could undo what I did within the vortex of the miraculous nature of our entering in, recognizing what's occurring, and returning. Okay, I don't know if this makes any sense. It's making me very happy to do this lesson. It's like you see right. Just don't define it, please, please. I know you're going to say, well, how are you? What about me? Yeah, that's the ego defining things and making things specific in order to judge your progress and my progress. Now, you think that has something to do with my progress, but it has everything to do with your progress and the necessity for us to return as one. The question isn't how are my knees. The question is, do we want to return as one? If we say yes, then we'll do anything, including let go of the idea that sickness is expressed in specificity. And trying to make it that way to prove it's true, rather than freeing ourselves from the definitions that we implied in the specificity and recognize that that was the problem. We had everything to define. We had to name everything in control rather than be restored to the eternal flow of the infinite creative power of the love that we really are. Stop defining yourself. Do you get when you go to a doctor, he says, you've got, and he tells you all the shit you got, you really think you got it. And because the two of you have agreed, you do have it within your association. Okay? Accept it. Now, how do you want to deal with it? That's the choice. If you want to deal with it without the guidance and direction of the Holy Spirit, then you're continuing to want to live in separation, which is missing the mark, missing of who you are. If you want to heal and you recognize that healing is associated with the activity of our divine mind and our godly nature, then you'll say, wait a second. What is it that I want? Only salvation can be said to cure. I want to be cured. I don't want to not suffer. How do I put this? I don't want to not suffer from arthritis and die of a heart attack. I want to free myself from all those concerns by living in the eternal light and love of God as I was created to be. We're being offered that. It's behind door number 356 in the workbook of A Course in Miracles. Beyond the words, when you free yourself from your definitions of sickness, sin, healing, God, and miracle. I know you got it all figured out. I know you can tell me what sickness is. I know you can tell me what sin is. I know you could look at my life and tell you how I am sick. I know you can look at my life and tell you how I am sick. I know you can look at my life and in the relationships that we've had, tell me the sins I've committed. I know that. So what? My freedom is in the non-necessity of a definition and the acceptance of salvation as my cure. And so is yours. And you can enter into that vortex together when we make the decision to and allow whatever is necessary to come to occur.